Welcome to the video over the 1949 Hudson Commodore. This car was purchased by my dad. My younger brother and my older brother and myself and my sister, we all thought that when Dad retired, my mom had passed away shortly after that, and we thought that he needed some kind of project or something to keep him occupied. And so my brother found this Hudson in the Biloxi area, I believe. And so Dad bought it, and after that, his health kind of declined, and so it really didn't do anything but sit outside in Georgia. And then this picture right here is from 2012, I believe. I took that. The first ones are from the owner that we got it from. And then when Dad passed away, my brother took it to Florida, and this is the picture this year whenever we went down to pick it up from him. And he lost the space in his garage due to his kids moving out. And so the car sat out in the weather for 4 or 5 years. And so these are the before pictures, and then the before I got it. Now these are the pictures whenever I picked it up with my family, and that's me and my youngest daughter getting it hooked up. And she's the most excited about the Hudson. Well, I think I'm more excited. That's somewhere in Mississippi. And we got it back home, and I'm just kind of doing some before videos, some walk-arounds. And so you can see the Florida weather was not kind to the paint job. It looked really good when Dad first got it, but the weather, did a number on it. But looking at it a little bit closer, there was a lot of underlying issues with the paint job that had been done to it. Originally, it's a J code, so that's a indigo blue or some blue. I need to look that back up. But the paint started peeling at most of the seams, and then it has a lot of surface rust. And so I kind of walk around it here. You can see my 78 F-150 there in the background. Been working on it for a while. Still a beautiful car. I love the lines on this Hudson Commodore. Inside, a lot of the suede, it's suede and leather that the previous owner, I guess, had done. Got some surface mold. Going to try and get that cleaned up. Started cleaning on the leather. That metal dash has a lot of surface rust, and it's in pretty poor shape at this point. I don't know how much he spent on this interior, but I bet it wasn't cheap. Some of the problems that I know about, of course, the fuel pump needs to be rebuilt. There's some linkage issues. The J code's underneath that upper door hinge. Window's cracked, but the transmission linkage is, I think it has trouble going into reverse. I drove it back in 2011 or 12, I can't remember, and man, it ran nice. And then when Dad passed away, my brother drove it from Georgia to Florida, and then it sat, and you see where the paint's peeling. I'm going to buff that down. I don't have the resources to pull it all off at this point, but I'm going to slow things down. In the trunk, I cleaned it up a little bit, and you'll be able to see some of the rust that has gotten in there. On the upper body, it hasn't eaten away at it. It's definitely there, but underneath the mat, you can see there's a lot of previous repair work that has been done. That I don't know that they had seen that whenever he bought it. See some of that rust. It's from the rear deck. And you really can't see much underneath this, but You can see that's been repaired and painted over, and not a great job of repair. And that's prior to Dad. Dad didn't do anything with it, and so there had been some work done on the rust, and it's got a hole in the floorboard by the driver and some repairs in other places. I think most of this can probably be salvaged for the time being. The previous owner had also put in an 8-volt system versus a 6-volt. You can see some of the surface rust there, and you'll be able to see that hole go straight through. There was a really poorly done patch job on that. A couple little pieces of metal were just basically tacked over it, and just not real great. But it was converted to an 8-volt system, and I've already ordered a new 8-volt battery from Napa, and it is in. And I want to crank it over. I want to get the fuel pump rebuilt. The hood sticks a little bit on the driver's side back area. I think it's just because of the rust on the paint job sticking back there. It's the i6 Hudson engine. Some surface rust in the engine bay, but pretty hopeful that there's not a lot that can't be repaired for the time being in here. Just want to get it running back on the road for now, and then try to determine the level of restoration that I can do. The next thing that I'm getting ready to do in this video is I'm going to pull all the spark plugs out and put some Marvel Mystery Oil down in the cylinders before I crank it over. Those windshield wipers are awesome. That pulley system. A couple of pictures just of the engine. Underneath, I just laid down. I need to get up on a lift, but you can see some of the more extensive cancer that's going to take a little bit of work. And I will probably just media blast this for the time being, and then spray it with something to stop the rust for now. If you have any ideas or suggestions, comment on them. I've got a friend with a lift. When I get it running, I'm going to drive it out to his shop and put it on the lift, and that way I can really make a good assessment of what is going on underneath this car. I know it's a different type frame structure, and so you really need to get it up and take a look at it. And then I also need to work on that linkage for the transmission to get that corrected. Brake lines are another thing. The brake lines are rusted away, according to my brother. He did a little bit of work on them, and so I've got to order the drum removal tool. That's next on my list, and then I'll yank those drums off and put new stainless steel lines on and get the brakes working, because that's pretty important. See some of the rust there. This is on the passenger side. It's been undercoated at some point, and that probably saved a lot of it from its life in Mississippi and Georgia and Florida. I don't know where it was before that. It's got Minnesota plates, so they use salt on the roads there as well, or it had one Minnesota plate. It's not the greatest video. I apologize for that. I just wanted to get something done so that I can start working on it. Yeah, that goes straight up into the passenger side floor, that step down body, which is awesome. And then here I begin the process of taking out the spark plugs. I think I put this in a little bit faster motion video. It's pretty repetitive. This is just the engine compartment once again. Big old generator out there. Remove the oil bath breather. The carburetor was very clean. Not the greatest job covering it up. Put a plastic bag over it here in just a second. I was really nervous about these plugs coming out. There was a little bit of rust. You'll see them here in a second. Plugs are in pretty bad shape, but you can see that there had been some moisture down on that head, and I was really concerned that those wouldn't come out as easy as they did. I used some penetrating oil on them a couple of days before this and just let them soak, and then I used some rags to clean up and blew it out with air. And then in each one of the cylinders I put some of this Marvel mystery oil down in there. Didn't have a whole lot of luck hand turning it over by the fan. Of course, that belt just let it slip, and I put a pair of channel lock pliers. My dad would not be happy that I did not use the correct wrench, and it moved a little bit, but I'm going to go get a bigger wrench so it'll fit down on that end bolt, and kind of hand turn the engine over before I put some power to it and crank it that way. I put the spark plugs back in. They're an auto light plug. I can't remember the number of it right now. And then I did not gap them yet, and so I'll pull them all back out once I get it to turn over and get some new plug wires eventually. Almost forgot to put the mystery oil in. And at some point here, I was using a Canon M50, I think is the camera I'm using at this point, and the battery started to die, so I'll switch here in a second to my iPhone. I think this is iPhone footage now. This one was the tightest spark plug. wasn't bad at all. I've snapped a couple of them off, working on a couple of different vehicles that I used to own. Just using bad technique on those. But here, this flathead 6, man, it's easy to get to the components. And this last spark plug had a hose right above it. That was the tightest fit, but once again, piece of cake. I had a 74 Maverick grabber with a 302, and on the left-hand bank, that last spark plug, oof, I think it was probably the original one. I owned it from 88 to about 90, and when I first got it, I bought it from the original owner, and I don't think that spark plug had ever been changed, that back one. And it took an act of the Lord to get that dude out, but I got it done. Got a new one in there. That was a great little car. 302 Maverick grabber, 3-speed on the floor. A lot of power for that little bitty unibody car. And if you would like to hit like and subscribe on this video, that way you can follow along. I don't know how often I'm going to have time to work on it, but I plan on documenting everything about this car, and it's going to be on this channel. I'll be putting other videos on here as well. I'm working on the 78 F-150 that you saw in the background. I've got a 1983 Alfa Romeo Spider that's going to be my daily driver if I can ever get the fuel system worked on. And then I've got a 1948 Chevy pickup, 5-window, and that's going to be the truck that I will trailer this on if I ever get to that point and take it to some shows. I think it'd be fun to haul the 49 Hudson around on a 48 1-ton Chevy truck. Hopefully I'll get that going. Or maybe I'll just drive the Hudson if I can get it going. But like and subscribe to my channel, and then and you can follow along. I'm going to kind of put whatever videos I make on it, and so there may be some that are interesting to you and others that aren't. But this is where they're going to show up primarily. And that was that last spark plug. Thanks for watching. See you soon.